I hate you. I've always hated you. I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to make it hurt.
Hello everyone, Father Andrew here. This video is my honest thoughts on the amazing digital circus. Heads up, I will be talking about spoilers for episode 9, Jax, suicide, transgenderism, and maybe possibly CTF_turbine. If any of those are triggering to you, then I advise this video is not for you. But anyway, moving on from that, firstly I want to talk about the things I loved about the amazing digital circus. Episode 1 does a great job setting up the characters and the setting. It gives us a good idea of what to expect. The characters are all distinct and recognizable and charming in their own ways for the most part. Further episodes up till episode 6 give most of the characters a decent bit of spotlight and development. The show has fantastic moments with genuinely amazing dialogue, my personal favourite scenes being Pomni helping Gummy Goo deal with his reality being fake in episode 2. Both characters are clearly adjusting to it and connecting in a nice way. I honestly wish those two could have stayed friends without Kane blowing him up for some reason. Kinga supporting Pomni in episode 3 when they're stuck in hell during the Middenhall Manor episode, seeing Kinga display lucidity as we learn more about him, and Kinga giving off some strong emotional support dad vibes was nice. The moment at the end of the adventure in episode 4 where Gangle after Pomni locks up the store for her, Gangle throwing her mask away and for a moment gets to truly be herself before she trips and gets hit by a truck. Ragatha also being drunk in that episode gave us a bit more insight into how she thinks as a character. Also, Orbsman, when I saw him, I cannot unsee it. He looks like a golem out of Cruelty Squad. I seriously can't unsee it. The stargazing scene in episode 5 and the dialogue with Jax, Pomni and Ragatha, the humor in episode 5 was also pretty nice. I also swear, that line about the sentient cardiovascular system fighting the military, that must be a reference to something. Is that Monument Mythos? Is that some obscure analog horror? I really don't know. Can someone tell me what that is? I feel like it's a reference to something. There's also Kinga comforting Ragatha in the loser room in episode 6, which allows us to see more of what she's like and how everything is affecting her, while learning more about Kinga too. Pomni and Jax becoming close friends, then fighting as Jax pushes her away in episode 6. The drama in episode 7 due to Kane's actions was fascinating and reveals what he's actually capable of. Kinga trying to hack into Kane and shut him down in episode 8 was tense, and Kane using all the characters' fears against them during his crash out was gnarly. And in episode 9, Pomni exploring Jax's mind was a fascinating idea and decently executed, especially with the fake Jax interpretations we see, which are all facades he puts on. However, besides specific scenes, I've noticed TADC does specific things very well. It excels at character dialogue and making interactions fairly believable in an otherwise fantastical setting. And has a very good sense of when to actually use comedy instead of having Marvel moments or Family Guy cutaway gags that undercut serious moments with something stupid. And the humor's pretty solid too. Overall, I feel TADC has quite a few strong points that make the series quite enjoyable, and my favourite characters had to be Ragatha and Kinga. The relationship between them was incredibly nice to watch. Every interaction between the two of them felt incredibly real. And honestly, the way they both respond to one another is just fantastic. The dialogue is amazing with those two. And despite all of that, there's still a bunch of other stuff I love about this show that I haven't talked about. Primarily because now I want to shift my attention to talking about things I don't like about the show, which is a lot. However, before I do, I'm going to preface this and get this out of the way. There's something I've noticed is being constantly said in the community, and I'm going to address it now. That is Jax being trans. I'm going to say this now. Jax being trans is not the W some people think it is, and I'm going to explain why. Because first, let's talk about the nature of Jax as a character. Firstly, Jax is Gooseworks' self-insert, which literally embodies everything Goose sees wrong with themselves. And episode 1 to 9 gives us a solid profile of what Jax is like. Episode 9 shows us that Jax at his core is a selfish, self-destructive, self-loathing, moronic asshole and loser. He pushed away Ribbit, his closest friend, causing them to abstract, all simply because he felt embarrassed about opening up to her. Yes, Jax literally pushes someone to suicide and pushes others away simply because he felt fucking embarrassed. And even pushes Korfmo away too, causing him to abstract, which clearly gets to Jax as he cries looking in the mirror holding the bowling ball. However, Jax is so moronic, he leans into the very thing that killed his friends instead of reflecting on himself and changing as a person. Why? Because Jax is selfish and he'd rather pretend it's all fine and live a lie. Evident from him losing his shit in episode 8 after the reveal in the Big Top Cafe area that everyone around him is a human consciousness, which shatters his illusion that everything around him is fake and devoid of real consequences. Jax realizes he's killed and hurt real people, pushing him closer to abstraction. He leans over the rails and literally says, "It's real," when he realizes what's happening. And his dialogue about everyone in the circus being an archetype in episode 6 and no more than that shows just how much Jax has tried to delude himself. Just how much he's burying himself and trying to cope and avoid the consequences of what he's done. Which goes to such an extent that he rants at Pomni later about how he is the one who hurts others for fun. And in episode 9, we see 4 fake Jax personalities that he puts on just to keep this lie going. And then, we finally see the real Jax. He's a self-loathing mess who feels that he does not deserve to be loved, saying, "You're not supposed to love me." Why? It's because Jax knows what he's doing deep down. Jax is fully aware of what he's done and he consciously decides to keep doing it. He's been given every opportunity to change. Jax instead rejects it and doubles down every single time. Jax is not a good person. If anything, Jax is a terrible person, and his mental unwellness and terrible coping mechanisms are deliberate and not an excuse for his behavior in the slightest. Now on that note, I'm going to ask you a question. Would you, my viewer, you want a self-loathing, mentally unstable, selfish moron like Jax representing you? If you have even a single working brain cell, fuck no, you don't. In fact, I was going to be subtle with this next section, but given how people somehow see Jax as redeemable or whatever, given everything we've learned about him, I need to be as blunt as a brick to the face. Also keep in mind, abstraction represents suicide in the context of TADC, Jax nearly abstracting in episode 7 and fully doing so in 9. Besides that, regardless of what you think or feel of them, if you support trans people or not, I personally do not support it, albeit for reasons unrelated to this video, so I'll be skipping over that. There are stereotypes surrounding trans people that are extremely negative. The whole 41% suicide attempt rate thing you see get thrown around, alongside the claims of chronic self-hatred, being mentally unwell, etc., and other things you hear about them. And keep in mind, Jax is the self-insert of a trans writer too, who, around the release of episode 8 to 9, was clearly suffering from all the stress the fandom has put them through while producing the show for them. And clearly has similar issues to Jax, given he's a literal self-insert. Essentially, I'm just going to say it straight. If Jax is supposed to be trans, then Jax is not just reinforcing the negative stereotypes, but strongly adding to them with his self-hatred, denial of reality, and wanting to kill himself. And being a literal reflection of his creator, who is also trans, and projects these ideas onto him. This makes Jax a terrible icon for trans identity to be associated with, period. Because as I said, Jax is a fucking terrible, selfish, and overall nasty person who nobody would want to be ultimately represented by. He's not even a cautionary tale in quotations either, he's just a reflection of the show's writer projecting their own issues, which a part of me suspects extends to the other characters too. Raghafer and Jax both have abusive parents. Gangle has masking, which is something Jax is doing by putting on his personalities. Zubal's body dysmorphia is connected with the Jax transition thing. And Kinga's wife abstracting is definitely reflective of Ribbit abstracting. Jax literally just has the problems of the other characters and amplified, which makes me suspect that Gooseworks also projects parts of their own insecurities onto these other characters as well, but that's beside the point. Besides that, not just all of that, but episode 7 goes out of its way to depict abstraction from Jax's perspective, which is, for context, literally suicide as far as the show is considered, and it depicts it as a gentle, peaceful process. I don't think I even need to explain why that's completely fucked, especially from a message perspective. Even more so when you consider he's a reinforcement of those negative stereotypes. Like, genuinely, Jax's trans identity shit aside, this alone, the abstraction being a positive, peaceful experience, that pissed me the fuck off when episode 7 came out. It left a really bad taste in my mouth. And honestly, I'm very glad this was walked back somewhat in episode 9 and redone. It instead shows Jax's mind unraveling as the real Jax is terrified, saying, "I don't want to go." So it was reshown and recontextualized as a terrifying and slow, horrible process, so yeah, that sort of tries to undo what episode 7 did, albeit in my opinion not very well. Unless the stage we saw him in episode 7 was an early stage, and the stage we see him in episode 9 was late stage, and there has to be some kind of distinction, but the show doesn't make that distinction, regardless, moving on. Anyway, regarding what we learned in episode 9, Jax did this to himself and deserves it at that point. Anyway, that aside, to wrap this point up, TLDR, if Jax really is supposed to be trans, he is horribly reinforcing negative stereotypes around trans people, and him being a reflection of a trans writer does not help that either. If anything, it feeds into it even more, and only magnifies the perceived validity of the stereotype. And again, I'm going to clarify that I don't support the trans community or the transition process for my own reasons that are not part of this video. However, this pisses me off from a pure writing standpoint and how retarded it is. Anyone who can put these dots together is going to realize Jax's terrible representation. Even if Jax wasn't trans and was attached to something else, he would single-handedly just be bad representation for that too. It's not exclusive to his identity as a trans character, it's the fact that Jax is just a fucking abhorrent person, and really trying to associate him with anything is going to drag that thing down. That's the point I'm trying to make. Jax is a terrible character, and if you attach him to something to represent that thing, he's going to drag it down. Simple as that. Anyway, that aside, to wrap this up, TLDR, he sucks and he drags down everything he's attached to. Simple as that. Anyway, moving on from that, I also have other smaller complaints about Jax in particular. For one, episode 6 onwards, Jax takes up increasingly more screen time, taking away development from other characters who I feel needed. Keep in mind, Jax and Pomni are supposed to be the main characters, but Pomni especially needed that screen time as she has very little actual character outside of being empathetic to a fault, which makes her essentially a dialed back version of Ragatha. Another issue I have is, why does everyone feel bad for Jax after he abstracts? He was nothing but an asshole who tortured everyone. Why does Gangle cry for him when all he did was abuse her? Also, after Jax abstracts, everyone's lives visibly improve, meaning Jax was literally fucking dragging everyone down the entire time he existed, which ironically depicts his abstraction as a good thing for everyone, and frankly, you know what, I'm glad he abstracted at that point specifically, considering what he did to Ribbit and Korthmo for fucking no reason at all, and has consistently done to everyone else because of his own selfish choices. Also, nobody misses him except Pomni for some reason, who, honestly, why? She has no reason to fucking care about him after everything he's done. She literally saw everything he did. Why does she care at all? And I certainly don't fucking miss Jax either. In hindsight, I hate him more actually now that we know what he did to Ribbit and Korthmo. Also, as this series progressed, I was honestly expecting the cause of Jax being the way he is to be something more logical and serious that would make him actually interesting as a character. I honestly thought Jax would have been in a romantic relationship with Ribbit, but something caused her to abstract, leading Jax down a path of acting like he does. Like, maybe they had a breakup and it was simply too much for Ribbit to handle and Jax blames himself. But no, Jax was always a selfish monster and has no redeemable qualities whatsoever. Overall, Jax just pisses me off and his character was a massive letdown, like playing on CTF Turbine. Dun dun dun, CTF Turbine mention. Honestly, with that, I'm done talking about Jax, and now to talk about my other issues with the show. This stupid fucking purple rabbit has taken up a good chunk of my script, just like he does the actual show's runtime. Lamau. Fitting even. Anyway, said issues being fairly small in comparison, except for a few bigger ones I'll get onto soon. Firstly, the show has a bunch of plot threads, plot holes, plus unanswered questions that never get explored properly, like the Cain and Abel company. What are they actually working towards in the end outside of generative AI like Cain? How did the protagonists get scanned in to begin with? Was it voluntary or were they voluntold to? Why even upload minds to the PC at all outside of scratches in an attempt to research to survive his brain tumor? Was CNA trying to research immortality? Because it's never stated if they were. And why is King sensitive to light at all? And why did he not tell the others they were all brain scans during the 18 years or so he's been in the circus? Why are names specifically not remembered? Why does the void even exist? Why are there not just invisible walls stopping people leaving the map? Why is abstraction even possible? What other past adventures happened before Pomni, implied by Orbsman that there were past adventures? Why is it exclusively October 15th for adding new humans that we see in the computer's log? Why is CNA keeping the computer running at all? Seriously, all of this is barely explored and there's no answer at all, and all we can really do is theorize, and as for that though, there are bigger issues to now go over. Cain got their mind files working, as Kinga himself says in episode 8, meaning Cain being paranoid about them wanting to leave and crashing out about it in episode 8 is completely pointless and self-contradicting, because Cain knows they can't leave, so why is he getting upset about that? He's also able to read and mess with their minds, yet he's completely unaware of the macroverse beyond a few photos of the place itself. Why does Cain not just look through the memories of the humans instead of finding the internet in episode 9? Also, Kinga knew what was up and told nobody for near enough 18 years. Unless it caused abstractions, even then we don't get told that or anything even implied, so Kinga was essentially just sitting there silent for near enough 18 years for all we know. How the fuck does it take Kane near enough 20 years to discover the internet connection in the void? Kane is literally a godlike being for those 20 years. He could have scanned the void for anything and found it easily. How does Kane even come back after being deleted? If the void is supposed to, for example, be the recycling bin of the PC, why is there nothing else to imply that? If it's not, then how did he even end up there at all unless he had a backup there to begin with, which would be contrived and stupid if it was the case? Alongside a few other larger issues, albeit I've completely forgotten what they are because I'm like 2 beers deep while writing this script at this point, and now I'm 4 beers deep as of recording this. On that note, the series also has a big because plot demands it issue, primarily with Kinga. Kinga only selectively remembers relevant shit when the plot needs him to. He's somehow the only developer who did not abstract despite being alone for a long time after Queenie abstracted. His light sensitivity is only when the plot demands it too, because somehow he can think clearly and recall Scratch being the first abstraction while facing the big fucking bright screen in episode 7. And overall, he's the one who suffers from this the most, but it also extends to Ribbit a little bit. Because you seriously mean to tell me that everyone just let Ribbit isolate themselves and abstract despite Korthmo clearly being worried about her and Ragava being the kind of person who would notice this behavior and change what happened by stepping in? Like, what? No, that's genuinely retarded and false and nonsensical. Like, you mean to seriously tell me the doll character who's known for spotting behavioral changes and going out of the way to comfort people wouldn't notice this? And Korthmo just decides not to? It's so dumb, I hate it. And the writing issues don't even stop there because I've come to realize something that, while it would technically explain everything, it's going to simultaneously destroy the canon of the show to a degree where I'm hesitant to even talk about it. And what is it exactly? Well, fuck it, I might as well talk about it. Kane possibly lied about not knowing what the internet was, evident from the trailers being canon, as the pre-pilot trailer fits perfectly with episode 8, the scene where Pomni gets a bunch of knives thrown at her, and then shows up back in the cafeteria completely covered with knives. And other trailers also show Kane knowing what's going to happen next, which I feel is related to what's possibly going on. I feel Kane was possibly secretly mind-controlling the cast the entire time to force his version of a story to create his own internet series. But what proof is there of this? Well, for one, the circus literally has an intro theme. We see it in episode 1 and it's referenced again in episode 9. However, it is literally designed to be the theme music you would start off a literal show with. 2, at the end of episode 9, Pomni literally waves goodbye to us, the viewers, which means she knows we exist. She can see us and acknowledges us. That means there are physical viewers in canon she's acknowledging. 3, Jax is aware of the audience and breaks the 4th wall multiple times. He even points at the camera and directly references the audience. He knows what's going on, yet the other characters don't for some reason. Probably because either Kane needs them to react that way for the joke to make sense, or they're just unable to see the camera and only certain characters can. And then there's the 4th point, the award ceremony in episode 6, which had an IRL voting website beforehand, which was certainly set up by Kane himself in canon, meaning he would need to know about the internet to do this. And Kane does this through the Wacky Watch, something he mentions in episode 1 when he tells us when Pomni goes out into the void, he's like, oh, she'll be totally spoiled. She will be totally spoiled. And the plot only has the void become relevant again in the finale. Kane knew what was going to happen if that line means anything. Kane secretly being in control the entire time would also explain all the weird plot conveniences and bizarre choices that make no sense outside of this being what's really going on. It's because Kane, he's shown to have chronic tunnel vision and forgets plot threads he can't figure out what to do with, like the exit door in episode 1, which he had no idea what to do with as he himself said, so he just forgot about it and discarded it. Essentially, Kane had this all planned out and he played us like a damn fiddle. And in my opinion, if this is canon, then this is catastrophic, because it completely breaks the entire canon, simple as that, beyond repair. This is so devastating that I genuinely refuse to believe that this is canon at all. There is no way I can genuinely sit there and in good faith accept this as canon, which is why I am so hesitant to humor this idea. Because either Kane is LARPing and pretending there's an audience which Jax is following along with, which is the only explanation I think makes sense without destroying the canon, Or he knew about the internet all along and somehow didn't pick up on the human world outside and is making this show for some fucking reason, which is extremely damaging to the show's logic if it's true. Either way, I legitimately, genuinely hope this Pat game theory level horseshit theory is not canon, because if it is, then the entire show literally falls apart. Which, ironically, it would also mean Abel, the NPC, was 100% correct. Kane will 100% commit to a bit because Kane himself decided so. But ultimately, why? Simple. For the audience watching, which just ultimately reinforces this theory, and I hate everything about it. The fact this all makes sense to me pisses me off even more so, and I just hate it. But anyway, besides all of that, besides all of TADC's flaws, I still at my core love this show, but not to the extent I did before episode 7. However, I still regard it as being superior to Murder Drones, whose ending literally contradicts itself repeatedly and overall pisses on the established lore because Liam stopped caring. Besides that, I still love TADC for what it is, in spite of its numerous flaws, and I point these out not out of hate, but out of a genuine passion for writing, which I genuinely want to see people do and improve in. So please don't take this video as me hating on TADC, instead, take it as a large set of pointers to avoid making the same mistakes the show did. And please learn from its strengths too. In that regard, if you're a writer, I very much advise making plot graphs to track details and lore progression, that way you don't lose plot threads or develop conflicts like the show did. Also, sit down and take your time before you add in anything and think about the implications and the effects they could have on the larger narrative. That way you can avoid things happening out of nowhere because the plot demands it, among other possible issues. Anyway, I hope you learned something from this video and enjoyed it. With that stated, those are my feelings on TADC and what I think about it. I don't really have anything else to say, so that's pretty much it. Good night, everyone. See you around. Goodbye.